Okay, so good morning, everyone. So I think we can get started.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Niskash. So how's your project going on? I mean, I believe you have submitted your midterm project review report. So I will also have a look, and probably, if required, we can ask you to probably give a presentation in the groups. So let me also have a look and get back to you with our comments. Okay, sorry. Okay, so where we were. Okay. Okay, so today we'll be talking about text classification, and we will in general discuss whether the text classification can be useful in information retrieval or not. So before I get started, so do you think the text classification or some kind of classification can be useful in information retrieval?
So yes, we might have to categorize documents, like if there are a large pool of documents, and that way later in when retrieving it can reduce the search space. We were discussing about this huge complexity if we have to compare all queries and documents. Rather than approximation, if we categorize the documents, we can get a more exact solution also in that case. So their classification would be useful where we can categorize it to arbitrary categories by domains or subdomains.
Right. So, but the classification will also work with some confidence, right?
Yes.
So in a way, again, it is some estimation, but definitely your first point is very valid, right? So where basically, I mean, probably the new documents is coming if you have a classifier. So basically, you can simply run the classifier and see, I mean, what is the result. So what are the application you can think of? Any application that you see in real life where uh, text classification somehow can help? How about something in email or something, or
Yes, sir,
So
the email spam filtering
spam
is
filtering? Yeah, very
using
nice, very nice.
and YouTube recommendation.
Okay.
so similarly in email categorizing to promotions or social or
Mm-hmm.
those categories that also can come under text classification.
Right. So in a way, I mean, the text classification is something can be useful in information retrieval as well as you can say the within information retrieval or probably beyond information retrieval as well, right? So it is very, very useful and it can be used in many ways. So today we'll be discussing about, yeah, so some of the instances where it can be useful and probably some basic methods through which you can achieve that. So the path from IR in the that we have studied so far. So in a way, I mean, you need to write some query, and for the query, you get the response. So every time you write a query, and whole information retrieval pipeline that we have discussed, so for a given query, you match with all the document you have in the database and so on, right? So this is good, right? This is good when you have probably the different queries every time. But how about the cases when you probably get the same query repetitively, probably every day, or probably based on some frequency, periodically, and so on? And often this is basically required when you follow some event. So, for example, in this case, you mentioned you want to follow an event on unrest in probably in some region, or probably you want to follow uh, news related to China or something, or probably news related to stock market or something, right? In that case, you do a periodic search, periodic query you basically file your query periodically, every day, every hour, or depends on what is the frequency. So do you really want that every time? And even the new documents keep adding to the database that you have, right? So probably you are more interested only on the new document which are coming, right? So in that case, do you think it's a more ranking problem, or it's more the probably the classification problem that you are willing to do so? Because here basically you are more interested in not just ranking, because probably the new document which are appeared may have the less ranking, but you want to probably have a newer document which are relevant. We are focused more on the relevant but not on the ranking, right? So here for new documents you want to find that. So in a way, in that case, uh, the classification could be a better benefit for such kind of query, and these kind of queries is called the standing queries. So so often the standing queries used for in different ways. So that could be, you can think of in terms of how about any probably the how about any email, how about any document which are appearing on position on, say, UNO or probably WHO, something that you want to follow. So in that case, any news are coming, so all the new document can be classified based on whatever the category or the classes you have, and accordingly you can basically give it to the end user, right? So often the stand queries are handwritten text classifier. So for whatever the query you have at hand, so basically you do some matching, or probably you whatever the criteria do you have, based on that you classify. Okay, so this particularly the new document which has appeared in the document is belong to say WHO, or probably whatever the other constraint you have. So this is just example you can think of. So one possibility could be, as I said, you can write the different rules and so on. So one is like you can manually check. Another is you can probably write some complex rule for a given topic. So like in this case, you can write a very complex topic, complex rule. So like you want to looking for Google alert for this or that and so on, right? Similarly, in the beginning, probably it might be manageable, but once you keep working, probably this rule become very complex, right? And since it is very complex, it may not be probably feasible in terms of scalability, in terms of generalizability, to handle such standing queries. So probably in that case, we need to think of what else we can do, how we can improve on that. So spam filtering, as you already someone has given the example, I guess Rahul. So it's example of classification task, right? So every time a new mail is coming, so you really don't want to bother user by a spam emails they are getting. And in a way, I believe many of you have become millionaire or billionaire probably through emails, through spam emails, right? So in that case, why you are building some kind of algorithm or probably the model that stop you being millionaires? What is the issue?
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Pradeep.
Sir, how this is related to information retrieval, like text classification?
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned in the beginning, right? So this is the whole context I was giving here. So when a query is repetitive, when it is required run periodically, so in that case, in case of normal information retrieval for a given query, you every time you match with all the document you have, right? But in case of when a query is need to be repetitive, so for example, I given you want to continuously follow whatever the new news is coming in case of some riot happening in some area, or probably any news related to WHO, or probably say for example China related news is coming. So you want to probably keep yourself updated, all the new document which are appearing. So in that case instead of doing information retrieval by comparing your query with all the documents you have, may not be very useful. In that case, you are interested more on what are the new news is coming. So for example, So this kind of query is called standing queries. So like in this case, I said earlier. So whenever the new document is coming, so despite, where is that? Yeah, so despite they may rank a slightly low as compared to whatever all the documents you already have, but you want to show them above as compared to probably the previous document you have, because you are more relevant, I mean you are more concerned with the new documents which are appearing rather than the ranking. For example, if the new document which has just appeared, uh, the rank, I mean based on the ranking information retrieval that you have, the ranking will be is probably for that particular document in such a way that it will appear on the 10th page, but you don't want to show on the 10th page, right? You want to show on the first page itself, because you want to keep track of all latest news or event which is happening, and that is can only be done if you do the classification. So did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, so regarding spam, you're talking about the spam, something you can see in similar way, right? You keep getting probably unrelevant email, or probably the email which is just flood your emails with the unnecessary or probably the spam emails, which is of no use, and probably even, I mean that may be some you can say the fraud or something. For example, click the below email, so you think, okay, so why not become billionaire, right? So let's make probably earn thousands of probably money and dollars and so on by clicking that. And once you click this, probably you lose all your private information, you may your banking information, and you may probably or probably some virus uh, probably inserted in your PC, right? So something, I mean, that's why you need a way. I mean, especially the email service company need a way to somehow reduce, somehow get away with all such irrelevant emails, and that's why they need to have some text classification. So here, basically, here the purpose is not probably just whatever the new email you can think of a document is coming. You do not need to rank them, simply just classify them and probably delete it or send to spam and so on. So let's probably define the classification or categorization. I believe it's very, you already probably aware of this, but still, I mean, let me give a very quick overview. So in classification, basically you have a representation of a document. So what is the issue here? How to represent these documents? So we have discussed several representation in the previous few classes. So for example, the bag of word is one of the way you can represent these documents. Once you represented these documents, so what is the next step? So for a given set of classes, C1, C2, CAJ. So like in this case, probably in the previous case, probably you have a class like whether it's a spam or not, right? So probably whether the particular news is related to stock or not. Given the news, probably it is related to some unrest or probably the riot or not. So accordingly, you could have probably some user-defined, predefined classes. So the next task is you need to determine. Basically, you need to build a classification function such that whenever you apply this function to the whatever the document or probably the in fact the document representation that you have, you need to tell which class it belongs to. And once you perform this classification, you can do a number of tasks that you want to do. So for example, if it is spam, then simply skip the inbox and send to the spam folder, and that's it. I mean, in that case, every day, I mean, user will be free from such unnecessary emails, and they can basically live a happy life, right? They don't have to get stuck on all those fraud or probably unnecessary time spending on these emails. So there are several ways you can do. So there are several classification. So one is the manual classification. So in early days, Yahoo and probably other websites basically do so. So one possibility, every time whatever the new document is coming, you look at manually and classify them, or probably put a label. Okay, so this is probably this is belong to stock, this is belong to that, this is belong to that. So for example, you can think of as a manual classification. So whenever a news category news is published, so often they put a category, right? So this particular news is belong to say Bollywood, this particular news is belong to say politics and so on. So in a way they are doing a manual classification of all the news. So whenever I mean the user is interested in particular class, for example, I mainly interested in the political news. I can get all the political news based on that category. So category is the class in this case. So in that case, it can be done manually. But one of the major issue I believe you can realize uh, uh, when the team size is small and probably the problem size is small, then it's okay. You can still do it. But given the scale, I mean, if it is going to be probably thousands of documents that you are getting and probably thousands of even more, I mean, probably the documents you keep getting, it is not possible to do it manually, right? So if the manually, if doing classification manually is not feasible, then what is the next thing you can think of? What is the immediate thing you can think of? Anyone?
Developing a machine learning classifier for it.
No, so you are probably going not the next step, probably the advanced stage. So what is the immediate thing you can think of? I mean, after the manual thing, what is the next thing you can think of?
So a rule-based system.
Exactly. So you can think of some creating some handcrafted rule, simple rule. I mean, so based on, so if the word contain millionaire, you become millionaire, click this link, something like that, right? So based on that, you can think of some rules and you can create rules and accordingly. So so in early days, I mean, it was heavily used. So because they have realized that the manual classification is not feasible, so they have started building different rule-based classifier. So in fact, in order to efficiently do those rules, what they have done, even the different companies basically build some different IDE. So using that IDE, you can write different rules like and, or, blah blah blah. So even in the sometimes in the different email service that you use, you see, I mean, there are ways to set filters. Okay, so whenever the email contains this particular word, when the title contains this particular word. Similarly, if probably the email content, email text probably have probably this word or probably something like based on some rule, you can basically filter out in a way. I mean, you can do some kind of classification. Okay, so if this is all the rules it follows, it will be this. So in a way, I mean, the instead of hand coded, instead of manual classification, the hand coded rules could be the next stage. And probably the next stage, as you rightly mentioned, Shivank, it could be because it could be the machine learning based classification we can use. But why do you need to use machine learning? Is the handcrafted rule or hand coded rule is not enough? What is the issue we see with that?
So sometimes it might lead to wrong sorts of filtering. Like even the emails that might contain useful keywords, those keywords that we have been using to filter out the emails, but even there might be some relevant emails that might also get filtered out together.
Right. And over the time,
And-
one of the example I've seen. Yes, Shivank, please go.
And sir, we also have to, make a new rule for each new query we entertain.
Yeah, because many times, I mean, the way user write, I mean, or probably the new document which are coming, it will be, I mean, it may be required that the whatever the rules you have written so far is not going to work at all, right? For several reasons, right? So in that case, even the simple rule-based thing is again not, I mean, better than definitely the manual annotation. Again, better, so better in terms of it takes less time, but it may not be as good, it may not be as accurate as the manual annotation, right? So then probably you need some better ways. So yeah, so as I said earlier, so earlier commercial system basically used to have the hand-coded rule base, and they have the complex query language. They have probably the expert who can write basically such rules, because it may not be that easy for a normal person to write such rules. And that's why, I mean, and also the building and maintaining these rules is expensive, because as Shivanka and probably others mentioned, yeah, so whenever the new document is coming, in that case, it's you may probably need to write the new rule again altogether, a new rule. So this is one of the example of Vertic is a kind of company which has basically proposed different rule-based classification. And So at that time, I mean, there was not many. So it was, so whatever the classification it was providing, the people were happy. It was bought by another company and later bought by HP, but they later basically they realize it's not going to work. So it's kind of, it's a mess for them. And probably it was got much attention that time because there was not much improvement in terms of machine learning, classification, and so on. So their rule-based thing worked well for them. And but later, whatever the limitation we discussed, be it in terms of scalability, maintenance, they later think that it's not that handy, and they give this up. So similarly, you can think of this as a document you have. So based on this, I mean, what are all the rules you need to write? So that is not going to be that easy. So the next, so that's why we need to think of some machine learning based classification methods. So supervised learning is one of the popular classification technique. So in that case, what happens? So you have a document D and fixed set of classes, right? So you have C1, C2, CJ. I mean, whatever the user defined classes that you had earlier. So you need to basically uh, train a model in such a way that whatever the documents you have in your database, kind of, you can say the training set D, and all which have some labels. So in supervised learning is basically you need to tell model, you need to teach your model based on some examples. So for example, whatever the documents you have in the training set, each will have some set of classes that you have. So for example, it has X number of documents. So all the documents either have C1, C2, and CJ class. So in a way, your model is essentially here basically the function that you are willing to learn, that will learn, okay, so this particular document is of class C1, has these kind of probably the features. Similarly, the document 2, which of class C2, has probably these set of features, and accordingly it will try to generalize. So in the later on, when you give a new document to your model, it will, based on the whatever the features mapping it has learned, feature to class mapping it has learned, it will tell you, okay, so this particular document belong to, say for example, class CJ. So here basically what you want to determine a learning method or algorithm which will enable us to learn a classifier Y, so a kind of function Y. So that whenever a text document D comes, we just apply that function here and probably get some class. So this is something we are willing to achieve in case of supervised learning. So some examples are naive Bayes, k-nearest neighbors, SVM that will be doing on decision tree, and so on. But again, so there is no free no free lunch, right? So as you have seen in the previous slide, for supervised learning, you need to give the examples. You can say the labeled example through which your model will learn. So in that case, you need basically the hand classified training data through which your model will learn. And is that easy to do so? I mean, how easy it is to basically do the hand classified training data? Can we easily create it? Or what are the limitations you can think of when you need to create such label data?
So there might be a lot of errors if we do it.
Yeah, so it depends on the task, right? Depends on the class, because there might be some classes which are easy to probably you can say label, and there are basically classes of probably the document which has been difficult, because for example, if particular document probably also having some words related to politics, it also have some words related to, say, sports. So for example, some sportsmen become politician, right? In that case, there is a lot of discussion about all probably the sports related work as well as probably the politics, right? It in that cases often it might be difficult to train to label the examples. But anyways, I mean, in many cases, at least you can train, you can basically label these data, And but another issue
Sir,
with such kind of, yeah, sure.
so can we also not do like clustering the data? I mean, clustering different classes and label them when the clusters are made. So there will be less time spent in labeling.
Yeah, so that is all the optimization you can do. I mean, yeah, so definitely, yeah, that's not an issue. You can do all those optimization. So here right now we are starting with the basic thing. So how you can get started, right? So that's why in many commercial, and also, I mean, whenever you want to generalize, you want to basically build a, you want to write basically a method which is probably generic enough so that a new text document come, it can tell you which class it is. In that case, you need to teach your model with a huge amount of document in your training set, right? Otherwise, what will happen? It won't be generalized, right? I mean, it will only probably bias toward the some of the example it has learned, and it won't be probably work if you are some kind of different documents come which is out of the distribution of the your training set. So that is the key thing we need to keep in mind. That's why in many commercial system they use a kind of mix of method, so they not just rely on, at least I mean in the time frame we are talking about. So where basically they don't just rely on say classification method, but also they also have some kind of rule based method. They also have probably some of the manual annotation that they do. Depends on the problem, depends on the type of classes and data they have. So for supervised learning, right, so since they have to learn a mapping, right, they need to learn a mapping of features to the class. So what are the features you need to think of? So that feature could be any sort of feature, like it could be URL, email address, punctuation, the text, the network feature, dictionary, and all these things that you have. The simplest thing you can think of, I mean, how about just treat everything as a bag of words? So whatever the words is there in, say, in the dictionary, in the, I mean, the whatever the words you use, accordingly you can basically you can use them. So one possibility would be, I mean, use everything. One possibility could be use everything whatever the data you have. But do you think, I mean, using all the data will help you in getting a best representation of the document? So ideally, yeah, so if you use all the all the features, ideally if you use all the words probably which are coming in the document, it will give you the very accurate representation of the feature. But often when you train some model, not so it will be basically work like that. Suppose you have a document like this, so whatever the classifier function that you have learned, you will give this to this and it will tell you which class it is, right? So when you give this particular document to it, in a way, first you need to basically give some representation for that. So in case of bag of words representation, this is treated like something like this, right? It will be treated something like, so like in this case, so for example, great appears twice, probably love appear twice, recommend is one, and so on. In this way, whatever the all I mean the document that you have, it will be represented in some kind of this. So based on this you can tell which class it is. So you learn all those by training data. So for example, whenever the love appears in the training data, so most of the time you have seen that this belong to, say, class probably romantic. Whenever probably the words like love come in the training data, most of the training data suggests that that is belong to the class, say, comedy, and so on. So accordingly, whatever the bag of words you'll give for the test data, it will accordingly learn which class it could be, and accordingly will assign some final class to the given document. But one issue that I hope you can realize, which I was trying to point out here, often the number of words or probably the feature that you're talking about is going to be huge, right? So for example, normally the vocabulary size, the dictionary size that you have is fairly large. So do you really think all the words is going to be useful for different classes? Can we get rid of at least some of the feature that we are willing to have here? Because not all features are equally important. So for example, suppose we are talking about love, right? So in case of a class for romantic love may be very useful, but some stop words or probably some other words which are not much used is not going to help a lot, right? So we need to think of how we can do some kind of feature selection, because it is fairly difficult to probably create the features based on when the number of unique words are fairly large. The dictionary size is very large, right? So you need some kind of ways to feature selection. So are you aware of any feature selection methods? Anyone?
Lasso,
Yeah, Venkatesh.
lasso regression, like we can drive certain components of the features to 0 by inducing sparsity. So that is one feature.
Okay, yeah, right. So you need to, I mean, you need to think of different ways. So one, and that is how it can help you, because it can help you by reducing the training time, because if the number of parameter, number of feature is fairly large, it will definitely take more time to learn the mapping of all the features and the classes, right? As compared to probably uh, if you have just probably few. And that is another reason, that is one of the biggest reason we have moved from representation of text from bag of words to some embeddings, right? Because usually what is the vector size of embeddings that you see? So for example, what is the embedding size of word to vec?
From 300 to 700 dimensions.
Right, something like 300, or sometimes probably it's slightly less. Similarly for transformer, you have probably 700 or close to that, right? But if you talk about the number of words in terms of, I mean, the unique word, usually the dictionary size fairly large, right? It is not feasible. So there are several feature selection techniques so that you can use to basically find out what are the features are important for the class, what are the not, what are not, and accordingly you can reduce the your features being used for the training, and that will basically makes the runtime model smaller and the faster, and can also improve in generalization. So it also avoids overfitting. So uh, anybody know what is overfitting? Anybody want to comment? What do you mean by overfitting?
When model tries to learn every single data point of training data.
Right. So in that case, I mean, the model will be very complex and it won't be generalized in a sense. Whenever some data point is coming, which is probably outside, I mean, outside the function, it is not going to probably, uh, it will basically not going to, it is basically not going to help. Let me show you with an example. I think that will be more clear. So feature selection, in a way, I mean, some of the feature selection techniques. So I believe you have also heard about PCA, principal component analysis. Similarly, the chi-squared. These are the way basically you can basically do the feature selection. And so the simple some of the simple feature selection methods are just use the commonest terms, no particular foundation. And in practice, I mean, these simpler feature selection can also lead you to uh, I mean, very good results. But if it is if you, and every time basically you want to have a very high classification accuracy, or probably whatever the metric you are using, so we need probably the best way. So the chi-squared and the PCA that you can use for better feature selection. So let's come back to now the classification, how you can classify. So the simplest one, so the one of the simple classification model that we talk about is the naive Bayes. So naive Bayes is basically based on you can say statistics that you can compute. So it classify based on the prior weight of the class and probably the conditional parameter of what each word say. So in a way, you can think of, you want to compute the um, you want to find the likelihood of all the classes for given document. So like in this case, you can think of, so for a given probably the document here, so xi is all the thing that all the terms it has. So you need to compute, okay, so whether it's a class C1, whether it's class C2, and so on. So there are two components. One is the first is the prior, that is the classify based on the prior weight of the class. So this is this part PCJ. How you can compute this? You can simply compute that based on what all the training data set that you have. The training data set will have the examples of for all the classes, right? So simply you can compute, okay, so what is the percentage, or you can say what is the percentage uh, when this particular what is the probability, you can think of what is the probability of class CI or CJ in all the training data that you have. So for example, if you have five classes and you have basically uh, uh, the distribution of these five classes in the training data set is say 20%, 10%, 30%, 40%, and probably the remaining 10% and so. So their prior will be 0 0.2, 0 0.3, 0 0.1, 0 0.4, and so on. Accordingly, you can compute. So one part is how evident, how popular this class is. So this is one factor. Another factor is you need to think of what are the features probably this class is based on. So xi, for example, the different terms, xi is the different terms of words which are there in the classes it has seen. So accordingly you can compute the probability for that as well, and adding both, just take the maximum likelihood for all classes, and in that way you can get this. So why we are computing the log? Any idea? Instead of, because ideally you can compute the probability, right? So for example, this Nevis, you can just simply compute PCJ plus log, not log, I mean the PXIJ. Why we are computing probabilities
So
in terms
for
of probability?
numerical log is for numerical.
Exactly. So if we won't do so, I mean, there will be kind of, I mean, the decimal underflow and so on. And so it's better to basically, because uh, basically it's better to just take the log and it will also represent the same thing. So since it is based on the numbers, so training is done by just counting and dividing. So like NCJ divided by NC and divided by N, that is the number of document for this given class CJ divided by all the documents that you have. Similarly, you can compute this probability here. So how this particular term xk is dependent on class CJ. I mean, whether this particular term is helping in this class or not. So accordingly, you can compute the frequency for that. So for example, the term CK, how many times it has appeared when the class C is there. Similarly, you can think of all the terms which are there whenever the class C is there, and accordingly you can compute this, not compute, you can estimate this probability. And the reason we are adding smoothing, because in the earlier classes we have discussed as well. So what if some of the numbers will be zero? So it will basically and also, I mean, it will basically give you the sparsity, right? So in order to deal with that, just simply people use some smoothing factor. So that smoothing factor could be 1 or whatever the other constant you can think of. So span SCN basically is one of the spam classification which has been proposed by Atlassian, if I'm not wrong. Atlassian is one of the popular software company, and so basically if you see, I mean, they have the different features in order to classify whether a document is spam or not, and using that basically you can classify. Okay, so let's probably have some more comment about the naive Bayes. So whenever the naive Bayes, so despite its name naive, it's basically not so naive. And what are the justification for that? Because it is very fast in learning and testing. Anybody can comment why it is so fast?
Because we can just like pre-compute these probabilities, and at
Exactly.
runtime it's just look up of these.
Yeah, so because these are just numbers, right? These are just some numbers, and often you have these numbers stored, right? Very, very fast to compute these numbers. And since it's just a number, right? You don't need to have probably huge embeddings and all those stuff in order to save for different words for the document. So it's a low storage requirement as well. So it's very good in domain with equally important features, and it is more robust to the irrelevant feature than many learning methods. So using all those, you can say the feature it has, you can say that the Naviebase is not so new. So another benefit it has, so it's more robust to the concept drift. So concept drift is about like changing class definition over time. So this is it's more robust to that. So when I mean the KDD, I believe you are all aware of this. KDD is one of the very popular uh, knowledge discovery conference. So basically they organize a conference at that time. The it held basically so often in many, in conjunction with many conferences, top conferences, they conduct different tests. Test, or you can think of is more like a challenge, or you can say the hackathon. So they, I mean, at that time the Naviebase basically the won the first and second prize, and they have shown that it's very very useful. It works basically. It works very fast. Despite you do not have much computational resources, it can basically help you. So so it's basically a good dependable baseline for the text classification, but definitely not the best, because after the Naviebase, I mean, there is in fact there are a number of machine learning methods are there. In fact, right now, I mean, even we have different um, deep learning based methods are there, which basically help you in doing better classification uh, in terms of you can say the classification. So do you think that in classification, the whatever the models that you are building can perform better than human, or it is not feasible? What do you think? In the classification task, what do you think? Can the whatever the models, whatever the rules we are designing here can perform better than human?
So I don't think that will be the case. Like that will be the ideal case what we optimize for, but that might not be the case because the model's search space is limited by the training data.
Mhm.
So in a real-time dynamic scenario, a human might perform better than the system. So we can't like generalize that from a limited samples that it will outbeat humans.
Right. So how about, I mean, probably I'll give you not limited sample, but probably 1 million example, or probably 2 million examples.
So if we design a classifiers and it will look for some limited amount of features only. But when a human comes for classification, then it will also look for different things like context of the text and different other features available. So they will behave more well.
Right. Yeah. So definitely, I mean, beating human level performance is not that easy for sure. It's very difficult, but probably for some simpler task, it might be easier. For some, it may not be that easy, but definitely achieving human level performance is the best you can think of. But now there are examples where the models basically are performing better than humans. For example, not in the text, but for example, you might have aware of ImageNet, right? So on the ImageNet, basically, I mean, when it started, right? So human level performance, I think people say the 95%. So they have probably thousands of classes. They say the human do mistakes in 5. So for example, in 5% case. So when they started building different model, they have probably starting with 50, I mean the 60, 70, 80. Now, I mean, whatever the latest model they have, I believe they have, yeah, so definitely they have beat the human level performance, and now they are achieving accuracy of close to 97, 98 or so. So yeah, so, but that definitely took much time, huge amount of, I mean, space, training time, training model and everything. So yeah, definitely that is not very easy. It's very, very difficult to do, beating the human level performance. So once you have the classification, the next thing is, yeah, you need to check how good is that. So in the earlier class, we have discussed about different evaluation technique. I mean, not early, previous, but some earlier class, we discussed about different evaluation technique. So what are the evaluation technique you can think of here to judge how accurate how good your classification is? Can you name some evaluation metric? Anyone? So how about accuracy, simple accuracy? How about precision recall? Okay, so yeah, definitely all those evaluation metric can be used. So one thing you need to keep that in mind. So evaluation must be done on some kind of test data, and that should be independent of the training data. And why do we need to make the test data independent to training data? Anyone?
So that the model is generalized.
So, sir, to overcome the problem of overfitting.
Also to means
So to
create a
estimate
class that is not already in the training data. If
to
a new
estimate
kind of data comes.
Yeah, so the thing is, I mean, if the test data is not even independent of training data, so in a way, I mean, not the same data has been used in training, because in that case it will be cheating, right? If you use the same data which has you have used in training and giving for the test, I mean, it's kind of cheating, right? You already seen. So ideally we want to give that kind of data which has not there in your training data. And that is why so often people do some kind of cross validation. So as part of cross validation, what they do is they divide the whole data set into uh, definitely training and test plate, but every time probably they use different train set and different basically the test set, and check the results on train on the training data and test on the test data to see how good they are performing. So for example, in case of 5 cross validation, what happens? In case of 5 cross validation, they randomly select 5 times uh, 5 times the training data from the given data set you have. So for example, if your test train ratio is say 80 to 20, so in that case you randomly select 5 times the 80% of the training data, and remaining 20% is used for the testing. So in a way, every time you use different test set, different training set 5 times, and get the average for all those. So how the cross validation help you in any ways in classification? Anyone?
So basically helps reduce the variance, like we
Exactly.
can know if it's
Exactly.
consistently out.
Exactly, because it might be the case the first time when you divided the train and test set, it may be probably biased, right? Biased in a sense, what all the similar kind of example that you have similar, I'm not saying the same, but similar kind of example that you have used in the training is mostly there in the test set that you have taken. In that case, probably on that particular trend test split, it performed very good, say 95%. But when you put that model in the production, you realize it is not even performing 30% accurate, right? So the problem could be because you did not check the variance. You probably the training test split that you have done might be biased. In that case, you need to do it's very general practice to perform the 5 cross validation, 10 cross validation, to just affirm yourself. Okay, so give me any kind of data, test data, it will be performing probably equally well, right? So it's easy to get good performance on the test set that was available to the learner during training, and it might be because it just memorized the test data. So that's why the cross validation basically help you in generalizing the stuff. So evaluating categorization. So as we have said, you can use precision, recall, F1, classification, accuracy, and so on. So simple classification accuracy you can think of is like, suppose it will be the ratio R by N, where N is the total number of test document, and R is the number of test document that is correctly classified. So that is more about the statistics. So how about vector space representation? So the previous representation is based on the bag of words model. So it means you have the frequency, you have the count, and accordingly you have done the classification. But we have discussed in the previous classes, you can basically represent the different documents using vectors, right? And in the vector space where the different axes will be the different unique words that you have. And in that way you can represent a document into different classes. You can represent a document on the vector space based on whatever the word it has, right? So in a way you can think of, the terms are the axes, you have huge number of dimension and so on. So how we can classify using this vector space model? Any guess? What are the things you can think of to classify a document in this vector space? So you can basically think of in a based on the following premise, right? So if document in the same class, then probably it will be near to some region, right? Or probably they will be all together to each other. A document which might be different, so they don't overlap match, and then probably they may be bit far away, right? So in that case, what are the solution you can think of? So like in this case, suppose these are the three classes you have. So this is government, and this is science, and this is art. Suppose a new test document come. What do you think? Which class it belong to?
It should be government because it's closer to that cluster.
Exactly. It's belong to government. And how you can justify that? For example, what you can do. So these are, you can say the centroid, or you can say the center of these two classes. You simply just divide this. You can just say the space, the plane based on this. So you can do something like this, right? So if you divide based on this, at least it is now, it seems that it is bit far to science, but probably closer to the government. But we still have to take decision about whether it is science or art or probably government. So what you can do further, you can do the similar thing here as well by taking the centroid, taking the centroid and divide. And in this way you can think of, yeah, so it seems like the given text document is closer to the government, and you can classify as a government. So in a way, how the centroid is defined? Centroid is just like you can take the average of all the documents in the class and take their vector and divide by the total number of documents. So in a way, you can do something like that. And once you have the vector representation, of centroid, you can basically divide the plane accordingly. So Rochio basically classification is based on this centroid thing only. So basically it look for what is the nearest centroid for this. So like in this case, this is something you are willing to do something like that. So here basically for a given document, you see which is the nearest centroid for this, and accordingly you can do. So this is something you can do for when you have two class Rochio as a linear classifier. Simply you can define this like this, and you can create a straight line to divide it. So this is something you can think of. So this is one example, right? But what is the most popular example that you are aware of based on the vector space? So one of the very simple and very popular example, the method is k nearest neighbor classification. So also known as KNN, nearest neighbor. So what it does to classify a document D, it basically consider k nearest neighbor, k neighbors basically. It define k neighbors, and it should be nearest in a sense that okay, so because often we do like if most of our neighbors are say supporting a party A, so probably we may have some influence on that, we may have some similarity, right? So in that case, it's more key. If our most of the nearest neighbors are like this, then probably most likely we are also following the similar pattern. So what you do, you simply do some kind of majority voting for the classes for these k nearest neighbors. So for example, the k nearest neighbors are mostly talking, like in the previous example that you're talking, if the most nearest basically the neighbor saying it is government, then you can say it's a government document. If the most nearest document suggests that it is science document, then it might be the science class. So accordingly, you need to find the k nearest neighbor, and that k depends on how long you want to have, whether it's like 1, whether it's a 5, whether it's 100, it is up to you. And it also depends on the application. It's not just up to you, but depends on the application and probably whatever the constraint you have. So do you think the larger k is the better? Anyone?
So it depends, like if we choose a very large case, there is also a chance that it may just over predict one case.
Exactly.
It will behave very abruptly when we are having imbalanced data.
Yeah, true. So in that case, I mean, it's not like we just have any large k. It should be large enough so that it can basically give you, right? So like in this case, so the same example we are taking. So earlier we have seen that this particular text document is closer to the centroid of government. That's why last time we said it's it's basically the government. But if we talk about the neighbors, which neighbors are probably more near to this document? So if you see the signs, I mean, the majority of, if we talk about KNN, K nearest neighbor, then probably the signs may have larger number of neighbors as compared to government. So for example, in this case, suppose you have this, you divide given this document, these two are the neighbors, you can divide and see which one is closer. Similarly, you can divide based on this, you can see. And based on that, I mean, whatever all the nearest neighbors you have, and you can create a plane and probably create a boundary and see. So this particular document is probably more closer to the signs, and accordingly you can do. So it's more like, I mean, you need to find a distance and see which class they belong to, and accordingly you can just simply count among the k neighbors which class is having the majority, and accordingly you can tell. So like in this case, the science is having the majority. So in case of nearest neighbors, so what all neighbors you think of? So in general, the, I mean, this KNN is not just set to 1, it is usually set to 3 or 5 and so on, or sometimes 10 and so on. So depends on, I mean, how sparse or probably how dense your data is. So it does not compute anything beyond the storing. That's why it is also a bit fast. So learning just stored and probably the label training examples. And so it is also called case-based learning, memory-based learning, lazy learning, and so on. And rationally is very clear. It is based on the contiguity hypothesis, how close or how similar it is. So as I said, the K is typically ought to avoid ties, because if you keep 4, right, what is the issue? It might happen, right? If you keep 4, then probably there are 2 classes, 2 and 2. In that case, there is no basically, you need some tiebreaker, right? In that case, so it's better do you always set it to some odd numbers so that you can easily get which is the majority class you have. So nearest neighbor, I mean, since you can think it, you have the k neighbors, you want to rank them, so you can use the inverted index to basically perform the same, and you can use basically inverted index to implement the nearest neighbor. So this is just details on that. So with this note, I think we are running out of time. So that is about the KNN discussion. And so mainly we wanted to discuss about Navier and the KNN, and Rocio in bit smaller details. But overall, you can think the KNN works very well, Navier works very well, and the KNN performs better than both NV and Rocio in most of the cases. And that's why, I mean, if you want to build some baseline, the KNN could be some, or probably the naive Bayes could be the simple baseline you can think of to compare how good your proposed method is working. So with this note, I will stop here. And these are some one of few more slides, which basically tell the difference between the KNN and naive Bayes. So like, what is the difference in terms of bias variance, which KNN has high variance and low bias, and probably the naive Bayes have low variance and high bias. So based on the example and formula, I think it's clear. So that is something, I mean, I stop here. So this is the final summary that we have for today's class. Any questions before we go for the presentation today? Okay, so it seems not. So thanks everyone. So please tell me who will be presenting today. I can make the co-host.
Yes, sir.
So we will be presenting today.
Shreya?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Shreya, I made you co-host. Please share your screen.
Yes, sir.
And who is the next group? Please tell your name.
Sir, Indronil.
Okay, Indronil. I made you co-host. You can go next.
Okay.
Who's the third group?
Sir, Adarsh.
Okay, so others, I made you co-host. You can go in third group. Please start. Thanks.
So is the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So Anubhav will start.
Okay, hello, good morning, everyone. So our topic title is real-time stress detection through CCTV. So now we will jump to problem statement. Next. Yeah. Mental health problem is a big concern, which is generally not taken as seriously as physical illness is taken. Contrary to this popular belief, mental illnesses are actual diseases that must be treated as seriously as a physical disease. So while mental illness might be in your brain, it affects your entire body. Next. So it's probably no big surprise that people with mental health issues don't readily seek treatment for their concerns. Actually speaking, between 30 to 80% of people with mental health concerns never receive treatment. So these are the causes that are mentioned, that fear and shame, limited awareness, unavailability, distrust, and many practical barriers are there that people don't share their thing. Next. Yeah, so these are some facts that are taken from the WHO website. We can see that close to 8 million people died due to suicide every year, which is one person every 40 seconds. Now, the major cause that is related to the psychiatric disease, with depression, substance use disorders, and psychosis being the most relevant risk factors, including anxiety, personality, eating, and trauma-related disorders, as well as organic mental disorders also contribute. The risk of suicide has been estimated to be 5 to 8% for several mental disorders such as depression, alcoholism, and schizophrenia. Next. So now we will we can see these graphs. The left one is suicides by age and income level, and the right one is number of suicides globally in young people, and we can easily see that young people are more prone to this problem. Next. Yeah, and this is the graph that shows the leading causes of death, ranging between ages 15 to 29 years, and we can see that suicide is one of the major causes. So now Roshan will continue from here.
Yeah, so now we will see some facts by the World Health Organization, which helps us assess like where India is with regards to the mental health issues. So like who states that there is lack of health workforce for treating such disorders like psychiatrists and psychologists. And according to the like fact numbers, we can see that 56 million Indians suffer from depression and 38 million suffer from anxiety disorders. And also there has been evidence that like mental disorders affect the productivity hugely, like further affecting the economy of the country. Next, we can see the statistics here that based on sexes, like female and male, and we can see here that India stood at the 21st position in per 1 million population cruel suicide rate. Next. So now we will see some of the existing methods for this task of detecting stress. So this is one such method which uses a physical activity tracker developed by Fitbit. Here they have considered four factors to detect stress: sleep patterns, number of working hours, physical activity, and change in heart rate. So they deploy a feature selection method, and based on that, they apply a logistic regression model on these features to detect stress. Next. So some limitations on this method is that like it majorly focus on sensor data that is depends on a wearable device. So we all know that like not everyone will be wearing such devices. So also this may lead to some false positives because the heart rate that we monitor from the Fitbits and other factors maybe due to some other factors, not necessarily due to anxiety or depression. And also because of the fact that not many people wear this device, like it caters only to a small audience, so we don't get much of data to analyze this to detect stress. Next. So Richa will continue from here.
Yeah, good morning everyone. As Roshan told the limitations of first system, so I'll explain the second system, in which real-time non-intrusive videos are captured, which detects a person's stress level by analyzing the eyebrow position variation from its main position that you can see in the figure. And here they are using machine learning techniques for analysis. Next. The major drawback of this system is that people can have varied expression and emotion. So it is quite unfair to decide stress level based on single facial expression. And also this system is not considering or analyzing any behavior or emotional analysis. So these are the drawbacks of second system. Next. And the third system which we found is two-level stress detection method, in which they are considering both facial expression and actions of a person. That is, here they are comparing both of them in two situations. Like in one person is enjoying some movie or show, and in other situation they are working in offices. So based on comparison analysis, they are predicting the stress level of a person. Next. But this system drawback is that they are analyzing all persons' state individually. That is not checking involvement of a person in workspace and work on very less features for analysis of a stress. Now Dharmendra will explain our proposed method.
Good morning, everyone. The proposed approach is next. As Roshan and Richa have discussed above, that most of the research and work has been done on the text-based and image-based data. So here we are introducing a new system which will work on the basis of video data stream using segments, right? And the most important thing is that in all research and works, people give attention on the facial expression to detect the stress. But here we are proposing a system that detects person interaction or involvement with the workspace using the webcam video data stream to detect the stress, like whether a person is spending his time alonely or with his other fellow members, and as well as we also detect the engagement of the person along with emotion detection. This system can help to take effective step to cope the stress before the bad consequences are happened. Next. Real-time stress detection through CCTV. We know that there are systems that can detect suspicious or doubtful activities through CCTV. So we also want to incorporate these kind of techniques in our system to detect the stress. So basically our system will detect the stress in employees using the video data stream, and we know most of the offices have CCTV installed in the premises. So using those CCTV footage, our system will analyze the emotional behavior and engagement of the employees alone or with other employees at the workspace. Yeah, next. So workflow of our proposed system, like how we will proceed this system to implement. So mostly the basic requirement will be already fulfilled. That is CCTV camera, because most of the offices have CCTV camera. If in case there is not, then we require CCTV footage in offices for real-time monitoring. After that, we have to remove all the clips that is blurred and failed to capture the faces in the CCTV footage. After that, these video frames will be converted into video segments for faster effective analysis. Also, we have to categorize each person separately so that the detection will be easy. And for wrap up the things, we will use deep learning techniques to achieve these proposed systems, right? Yeah, the next will continue by Shreya.
Okay, so as told by Dharmender about the approach about the proposed system. So the proposed system basically consists of two parts that are main: the phase level learning and the actions learning. So the phase level learning refers to the person that is localized into the CCTV footage. So the person's expressions are being retrieved from that, and the person's expressions, like whether the person is happy, sad, or face, are detected like according to those expressions. In the action learning, so in the action learning, what we tend to do is the refers to the engagement detection in the action learning, like what action the person is performing with the other people in the workspaces, like whether the person is engaging with that person or not. So this is the main thing that we are combining the action learning and the face level learning. So over here, what in the action learning, we are using the image segments and comparing with the optical flow, and which represents the emotions of the person, like what the person is doing, whether the person is sitting alone or whether the person is interacting with other people. So why this system? So the first question that will be asked, like why do we prefer this system? So the first point is, as told by Anubhav, like the people do not prefer to take help, or people do not prefer to go to the psychiatrist when they feel like they're in the stress. So this will be the automated task, and the people can be talked, and the people can be reduced from the stress during the office hours. So this is bridging the gap between the psychiatrist and the mentally ill people who cannot take the help. So the thirdly, this is the combination of action and the face level learning. So this is in reducing the false positive cases in which the person is not in the stress but is detected by the but it is detected by the action level learning. Consider the case where the person is an introvert. So the action of that person would be like he won't talk to the much of the person over there in the offices. But the face level learning would detect like the person is not sad or is in the stress. So the combining both will reduce the false positive. When we the stress detection task, so there is no need of the manual supervision, so the stress detection task has been automated. So the real-time analysis, this is a faster analysis of the faster monitoring of the system. And the main important point is the engagement detection, in which we are monitoring like whether the person is interacting with other people or not. So like when we consider the feasibility of the proposed system, so in the short term, we will see like the system will work for the smaller group of people in the office premises. The CCTV cameras are installed in the offices. So those CCTV cameras can be leveraged to express inculcate the phase and the action level learning, that is detect the emotion and the actions which are linked to the stress. In the midterm we can do the system that detect the stress can be compared with the psychiatrist, with the medical records that the psychiatrist have, and we can improve the accuracy of a system. So the comparative analysis between the real time, which is detected real time video data, and the medical records from the psychiatrist. So this will improve the accuracy, and we can collect the data from the symptoms or the expressions or the actions that the person behave like during stress. In the long term, we can include this system to other workspaces like the colleges, schools, or the coaching centers, where the students are mostly in the stress during, so and they do not prefer to take help so this system can be inculcated to other workspaces. And since the system does not consider any physical features like the age, anything like the age, the face structure, anything else is not considered, so this system can be inculcated in other workspaces. So this was the presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
So thanks, Riya and everyone. Any questions from other students? So based on what do you think? I mean, which kind of mental health issue is easier to find out through your proposed system, which is not? And meanwhile, probably the next group, please share your presentation.
Okay, sir.
So we feel like
Shreya, please stop. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, carry on.
Yes, sir. I'll stop presenting.
Sir, I would say that detecting like depression is a much more difficult task than stress. So we plan to detect stress because it is the starting of any it is indication of a person turning into depression, right? So it is better to detect stress rather than waiting and like until he like gets into depression. So I think it is much easier to detect stress than depression. So we focused on this problem.
Hello.
Yeah, please carry on, Indranil.
Yes, sir. Can I start?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so good morning, sir. Good morning to my batchmates here. So we are Group 11, and I am Indranil Mojumdar, and today I am going to present Intelligent Investment Advisory System. And I really hope that all of you find this topic very interesting because it basically boils down to like growing and multiplying your wealth. And this is something which I think everyone should know and also everyone likes. So this is the content of my presentation. We will be talking about the motivation, the problem statement, the existing systems that are there in place and their limitations. And then we will also talk about our proposed solution and its novelty and its feasibility over the short, mid and long term scenarios. Okay, so first of all, what is exactly investment? So it is nothing but allocating your money in some expectation that it will give some benefit or return in the future. So let's assume you save some money from your salary or maybe from the money you have got from your business. And after saving it, you want to, let's say, buy some gold. Fine. And after 10 years, when the prices of the gold would increase, basically you have got some return on your investment. This is simply what investment means. Now, my second question that I would like to tackle is that why is investment important in the first place? So I have here two of my friends, Ashi and Pallab. So both of them have decided to invest some money. Fine. Now we will look at the fact that Ashi is saving 10,000 rupees monthly, and she started at the tender age of 25, and she is doing till the age of 60, and she has a rate of interest which is 15%. And so the total principal, as you can all count, 10,000 into 35 into 12 comes as 42 lakhs. On my other hand, there is another friend of mine, Pallab, who likes to party a lot. And so he hasn't saved much till the age of 35. So he decides to save 20,000 rupees starting from the age of 35 to 60. And he wants to go it at a rate of 15%. And his total principal, again, comes to be 60 lakhs. So we can clearly see that Ashi has a lower principal, or she has investment a lower amount of wealth. But could you guys guess who would have a bigger wealth at the time of their retirement? Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going forward to the next slide, in which we can actually see what happens. You can go to any compound interest calculator and you will see that basically Ashi would have 15 crore rupees at the time of her retirement, whereas Pallab, even after investing at least 1.5 times more than her, would get 6.6 crores only. And this is simply because of this fact, compound interesting. It is rightly said to be the eighth wonder of the world by Albert Einstein. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. And so it's very important for us to realize the power of compounding and also to invest our money profitably. Now, you would ask me, okay, all this is fine, but who the hell on this earth is going to give me 15% interest? The banks give us a meager interest rate of 4, 5, or at the max 6%. And you can see at 6% rate, the value of 42 lakhs just gives me 1.5 crore, which is 10 times less than what I would have had I gotten an interest rate of 15%. So the most important point here is that what are the investment options that we actually have in which we can have a greater return. So we can see the graph on the right hand side. This is the graph of Sensex. So basically it is the average of the growth of the 30 biggest companies in India over the last 42 years. And as you can see in the screenshot with the highlight, it has a compounded annual growth rate of 15.9% over the 42 years. So basically, if you invest your money in the top 30 companies equally, divide your money equally and invest in them, there is a huge probability that you would get a very good return on your investment. Moreover, we all know that how well the IT giants of India like Reliance and TCS have done over the last few years, and they have consistently given more than 20% returns. Also, international IT giants like Google, Microsoft, Apple have also done well. So it is not really impossible that you can't get 15%. It is very much possible. And I would also like to say that there are various investment sectors, not only stock markets. You can go for mutual funds or maybe buy commodities like gold or silver, or even government bonds or real estate. Now, herein lies the biggest challenge for us, is that to create a system that would actually give us advice on where we should invest our wealth and how we can actually manage our wealth so that we can have the maximize the money that we can save. So from here, Ashi is going to take. Oh, sorry, I have just one more slide that I forgot. I'm sorry for that. So this is the existing system and its limitations. So the existing systems that offer us financial advisors are the financial firms like Person Capital, Bloom, Wealthfront as well. There are Indian counterparts like Bajaj Capital and Kotak Group. So what we will basically do is that it will give them a huge chunk of money. They will manage it for you. They will invest it in proper places for you on your behalf, and they will charge a hefty amount. Okay, so all of these are paid services and very high minimum account required. So you won't be able to like invest something less than a crore in all of these companies. Mostly all of them have a limitation that they work on only one kind of asset. So maybe they are managing only stock market investment, or maybe they are managing only mutual funds. They are not taking into account the whole other aspects or the other themes in which we can invest. We should like keep in mind that there are many investment themes, and all of them give us a very good opportunity to grow our money. Also, there is no flexibility in terms of choosing our time of investment or the risk appetite. Like suppose you have 10 years and you want to invest 40,000 monthly, and you want 12% return, and you are a moderate risk taker. So you wouldn't be like the whole money should go down, and also you would be like willing to take some amount of risk, right? So what to do next? So herein comes the actual need of an IR system, which would actually give us the advice and give us ranked retrieval of searches of what we actually should do and how to manage our portfolio and distribute our wealth in all the investment themes. Ashi, you can take over from here.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so now since we see that in the existing system, we don't have any flexibility for risk appetite and time period of investment and all the things. So our proposed system consists of all these features. So our proposed system is something like a search engine. Basically, it is an advisory system come search engine, in which depending on the principal investment amount, time period of investment, risk appetite, a system will suggest the user investment options which will be ranked through cosine similarity or all the similarity techniques which we have studied in IR. So basically, the system algorithm uses the deep learning and the reinforcement learning models, in which it will predict the future values depending on the internal and external factors. Since we have seen in the last slides, this is a BSE Sensex graph, and here this is the highlighted part where the Sensex got very down. This is the time when the COVID pandemic was there in 2020. So our system will consider all these internal and external factors, like what can happen and what will happen and what have happened in past, and it will suggest where to invest and where to not. Next slide. So this is how a system will work. Like a user will input all the month, like he will input a monthly amount is 15,000, time period, expected rate of interest, and the risk appetite. Risk appetite may be moderate, very high, or low, and the system will then give the options for investment, like you should invest 50% on gold, 25% on this company, and this person should be invested, or you should do the FD. Like such options will be given in a ranked manner. Okay, next slide. So this will be a proposed flow. In brief, we can visualize what will be happening. Like the user will search and provide its preferences. Then the model, this will be made ARIMA or LSTM or any time series model. It will predict what should predict the future and suggest the options. Ranked options will be there, and all the system will consider all the internal and external factors. Now I'm talking. So what are the external factors like market sentiments, new government rules, or global or national catastrophe like any pandemic or anything, and internal factors like reputation of the company, emergence of new product, or anything happened in the company. So these all the factors will be considered, and our system will predict the options for the user. Now, novelty will be discussed by TG.
Yeah, good morning. So the novelty of our proposed system, basically it caters to stocks, mutual funds, government bonds, commodities such as gold, silver, and real estate. So the personalized advisory system, as it's explained by Ashi and Indranil, gives different advices which suits different people depending on financial situation, time period of investment, and like Indranil said, risk appetite, which is like the most important factor which determines what kind of advice will suit a person. It has to be tailor made to like fit the requirements of the people. And the techniques that are used are deep learning, reinforcement learning, and such as ARIMA. So the system's prediction model is trained on various features which comprise the enormous number of internal or external factors which determine the price of a stock or commodity, and various factors or attributes that can be like market sentiment, how well economy is doing, global or national catastrophe, change in political scenario, new government rules, emergence of new technology, etc. These all comprise of the external factors, whereas the factors like company's cash flow, profitability, reputation, or emergence of new product, etc., these comprise of the internal ones. Yeah, next.
Hi. So, as told by Ashi and TG, the proposed model can work quite well for the short term by creating a system based on deep learning and reinforcement methods, which would advise people to how much to invest in and in what sectors, depending upon their age, financial stability, and other factors. And this kind of system will be free for the users. While for the midterm feasibility, the system can advise users on investment in new assets, such as cryptocurrency, because of blockchain technology will be booming by then. For example, stock markets for cryptocurrency were affected by COVID-19. And for example, when Elon Musk said that we can buy Tesla using Bitcoin, that also surged the prices of Bitcoin. Second would be automation, where the system will be selling and buying on its own. And we have to improve our system for better predictions and fluctuations in the stock markets due to change in market sentiment, such as when government changes new rules and emergence of the new technology, global catastrophe, etc. So these are the midterm feasibility methods that can be adopted. Next, Neha will tell us about the long-term feasibility.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So coming on to the long-term feasibility, taking over from where Abhishek has left, our model has two long-term feasibilities in 10 years or more. First one, social interaction with the robots will be very much popular by then. And I feel that we all would be having some robots in our home with whom we can have a daily conversation and have a social interaction. They are the ones who can actually access the financial and psychological situation of us, and they can always advise us against high risk. We have often seen people under stress or anxiety to make incorrect judgments related to the financial decision, and we often over-assume our risk-bearing capabilities. The robots will safeguard us against it and obviously makes the trade automated. The other long-term improvement that we can do is something called algorithm trading. So basically, human figures are slow and they can't really make thousands of trades in a span of seconds, but computers can do that, right? So we hope that they give us much better investment returns over the long term. This is something which has been used by the financial institution over the past decade, but we are a system. We want to bring this to the public as well. Next slide. So does anyone have any question for us?
Any questions from anyone? वैसे पल्लव के साथ नाइंसाफी की यार मैं से mention is 35 age.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyways.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, how is it going to be different from like someone who is having this particular robot is like more beneficial than other which is not having? So how it is going to create that environment of justice in the stock market?
Actually, the robot thing that you are talking is only the long-term perspective, right? Like if you have a robot at your home, like let's assume 10 years from now or maybe 15 years from now, and if so we are basically thinking that we will put such a system inside the robot that it can interact with you on a daily level and actually understand whether you are anxious or under stress or not. Okay, so what basically happened is that just a few days back, or I shouldn't say days, a few months back, we had the coronavirus pandemic, and lots of people lost a lot of money in the stock market simply because they panicked and they took out all their money from the markets. This is something, the panic or the anxiety is something that basically makes us like take wrong decisions and often makes us take less risk or even more risk for some people. And the robot will basically save us against this risk and give us the best judgment on what we should do. It is just a social interaction robot.
Actually, according to my experience of stock marketing, someone's anxiety is making you profit. Like if somebody is anxious about some stock, which is like creating profit for another one. So the ecosystem is all about that.
Yeah, that is what you are saying is about day-to-day trading, right? So we are not like day-to-day traders, we are long-term investors, and like day-to-day movements shouldn't like make huge
Okay, so
problems for
sorry
us.
to interrupt. So let's probably let next group start presenting since we are running out of time. But anyways, you can carry out discussion over the chat. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, just please carry on.
Yeah, one second. So, good morning, everyone. We are from group number 37, and the topic for our presentation is video information retrieval system. So, generally, we search for the textual data in a document, but what if a user wants to search for a video, depending upon the content or the objects or the events in the video? Since there is an immense amount of video content that is available on the internet today, so the need for such an information retrieval system is vast. So why we are building this? So since we know that searching in a non-textual unstructured data or multimedia data is not so effective. Also that the amount of data in the database is quite large nowadays. So we need an efficient algorithm for searching the content in the database. Also, if the user wants to find a video using the content of the actions in the video, so he can find that video using ARM model. So this is the stats and that we found about the amount of the video traffic that is available on the internet. We can see that the amount of the video traffic is increasing year by year. So Khushbu will take it from here.
Okay, so for this task, image captioning would be done. For example, say if there is a shot in the video, like the first picture, then the system would specify that there is a man in orange jersey who is walking on the road. And for this purpose, specific questions are asked to the system in order to retrieve what is happening in the system actually. And in order to do this, prediction is not only done on what objects are there in the system and how they are interacting with each other, but will also parse the questions correctly and put it all together in order to find out what is actually happening in the system. So for this, there would be 4 types of questions that can be asked. So first one is the descriptive question, and the descriptive question would specify what is the object in the system. Second is the explanatory question, which would specify what is responsible for what event. The third is the predictive question, which would specify the answer to what will happen next in the system in the video. And in the fourth part, that is the counterfactual question, it would specify what if something happens. So next slide. So let's have an example. So for say, if we have a video in which there are spheres and cylinders of different colors, and these objects are colliding with each other in the video. So the system will predict about them and describe how and which ball and which sphere and which cylinder are colliding with which cylinder. So for this purpose, next slide, please. So for this purpose, for example, in the case of predictive question, the question can be such as what will happen next in the video. So the possible answers that the system could result into would be that the metal sphere and the gray cylinder collide. It would have been better if you could see the video as to what is happening in the system. The other possible answer could be that the red rubber sphere collides with the metal sphere. So similarly, for the descriptive question, the question can be, what is the material of the last object to collide with the cyan cylinder? So the possible answer that could be retrieved from the system could be metal. So combining all these questions all together, we would get as in what is happening in the system actually, and how is this video proceeding. Now Himanshu will continue.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, you must have got the idea regarding what basically we are trying to propose. So basically, one system which we have today is the Google in video search feature. Basically, in this, what happens is a particular video is being divided into segments. Like suppose we have a particular review video. So in till what time frame we have, like the camera feature is being explained, or in another time frame, in a particular other time frame, what other features are being described. So basically the video has been divided into some small segments, and each segment has some information related to it, like what is being done in that video. So but in this case, the problem is that a lot of information is not there. Like suppose if we want to search about a particular person in a particular video, then that thing cannot be done till right now. So basically from this only we got the motivation ki yes, this system would help a lot in various ways. So this is the limitation of the basically this Google feature which we have right now. So we want to like overcome this. Yeah, next slide please. So basically what we are trying to suggest is that today we have research paper regarding that how we can annotate a particular image. So we can use those research papers. From those research papers, we learned also like image can be captioned easily through those, like applying the LSTM and all other models. So basically what we can do is we can divide a particular video into various frames, and each frames can be annotated using those algorithms or the proposed methodologies. So further, these frames will have particular textual information regarding them. So basically we can just index them on that particular frame by frame basis. So now what we have is a sequence of what we can say events, or the sequence of sentences for a particular video. So now basically what we have done is we have extracted all the textual information from the video, and we can use the existing information retrieval systems which we have today, and they work pretty well to search in that particular textual field. So from like suppose if I want to query about like some kind of, I describe some event and I want to search it. So basically since now we have textual information, we can search it easily, and we can tell that yeah, from this frame to this frame, or like in this video at this particular frame this event occurred. So this is more of like our search space is being focused toward the exact event rather than being in a broader way, which right now Google is working on also. Yeah, so please next slide. Yeah, so basically after developing the system, various like new features can also be added into that. Like suppose if a particular user query about a particular event, or if we we have like some kind of surveillance system also in which we want that a particular event occurred. So from where it occurred. So basically the video can be forwarded to that particular point, and we can exactly tell that, yeah, this event started from this particular point of time in the video. And obviously we can rank the videos based on the relevance of the video related to the query. And like we can also add the multilingual support. Like obviously that is like after creating the system, such feature would be very useful to us. Yeah, please, next slide. So basically yeah, hello, any question? Okay. Someone is asking the question. Okay, so from now the Nitika will proceed.
Okay, now talking about the goals, short-term goals for the particular project is like for the first phase, we will have to develop a system which is efficiently break a video into frames and generate textual information. For the midterm goals, we are planning to develop a system which can index textual information to its frame such that it is a memory efficient and helps in a faster retrieval. For the long-term goals, we will be planning to develop a fully functional video information retrieval system. Now further, Vivek will continue.
So the future application of this system can be the consumer video application. We can view the interesting part quickly. So this can be used in the OTT platforms and video streaming platforms. The other application can be we can filter the content based on the video description. And also we can build the recommendation system based on the video content. So it's all about our presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so thanks. One quick question. So how it can help, for example, in video advertisement?
Hello. So can you please repeat?
So how it can probably be useful in video recommendation, the video advertisement or something?
Video recommendation in particular sense, we are saying like right now what we generally do is like if a video has particular description, on that basis we generally recommend the video. But about like we don't know basically what the content is present inside the video. So basically it would be more robust toward that recommendation. Yes, this particular video has this particular sense related to it. So on that basis we can do, because right now most of the like video is based on the description which is being provided. So we really don't know what is inside the video. So it can like enhance or like improve that recommendation system. In that way we were like
also
thinking
there
about.
are like clickbait videos, right? For example, the description says something, but inside when you see the video you find something else. So in that case also this is very beneficial.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions from others? Okay, if not, then thank you so much again for staying over late, but I hope really enjoyed the presentation, all three presentations. And thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, sir.